With less than 5% of women over the age of 50 are taking hormones right now and in the US. And so less than 5% is abysmal. Most women are candidates for hormone replacement or menopause hormone therapy, whatever we're calling it now. I think all women deserve to have a conversation with their doctors about whether they're a good candidate, risks and benefits. And right now, those conversations just aren't happening.
And if they are happening, it's very often biased. I also tell women, I
Yeah,
don't know if hormones are for you or not. I don't know. If you shouldn't be bullied into it because
sure.
you should educate yourself and have this conversation with your doctor. And I always believe in this shared decision making, but both sides need to be informed and kind of ready for it. And again, women can do whatever they want. They can go and just say, I'll do whatever my doctor does or says, and that's fine too. It's your body, your health. But if you are concerned and you want to take control, then we need to advocate for ourselves. And that means it's going to be a little painful and trying to learn about hormones and how our body works and all the confusion, the conflicting information. And it's just the way it is. But I encourage women to do their homework. You're well done for listening to us as well. This is part of your homework. So thanks for tuning in. Right, it's a real pleasure to have Dr. Amy B. Killen on the show again. Welcome.
It's so good to see you again. We always have a good talk.
We always have great talks, and we used to run into each other in these health optimizations conferences and stuff. And it was so cool to see you in person and see you on stage. You're doing such amazing work, and now you're in the menopause space, and so am I, and I have so much to unpack here. And I think the last time I saw you, oh no, last time I had you on the show, okay, I went back and I was like, when did Amy come on? And that was 4 years ago. Like,
Wow, was it?
yeah,
That seems, oh, that's crazy. Where does time fly? Time flies.
totally flies. And at the time, we talked about sexual health, skin health, and regenerative medicine. And that was such a great episode. Actually, I'll have a link to that in the show notes. And now you're leading these really powerful conversations around menopause and women's longevity. And I'd love to know what shifted for you. And I literally just listened to your episode with Natalie Nidham. So I know the answer to this now, not when I was writing the question.
Yeah.
But I want you to share, was it the science, your audience, your own perimenopause experience, and what pulled you further into this direction?
It was several things that all happened at once. I mean, first of all, I'm 49, so going through all of these things myself certainly made me pay attention. But also, about 2 years ago, my mom fell and broke her hip. And watching her go through that process, seeing the way that the medical system was mishandling her estrogen therapy and how they mishandled her and how they continue to mishandle her in terms of her menopausal symptoms and the use of estrogen. I just realized that women are just continue to be misinformed by doctors, even now, even to this day. And even though the FDA yesterday reversed their black box warning on estrogen, which is great, it's still going to take such a long time for the medical system to really catch up. So I just became more passionate about getting the information out there to women and doctors about how important these hormones are.
I'm so glad you did because there are not enough voices. I think some women who are listening go, gosh, my feed is full of menopause. And that's because you're feeding the algorithm. But I stop women on the street 24/7, asking them literally 5 questions about menopause and what do you know? And most women are still clueless, and most women are not getting the attention that they need from a doctor. And so I think we still have a lot of work still to do.
With less than 5% of women over the age of 50 are taking hormones right now and in the US. And so less than 5% is abysmal. Most women, not all, but most women are candidates for hormone replacement or menopause hormone therapy, whatever we're calling it now. And so I think all women deserve to have a conversation with their doctors about whether they're a good candidate, risks and benefits. And right now, those conversations just aren't happening.
No, and they're not. And if they are happening, it's very often biased one way or another. I mean, I also tell women, I
Yeah,
don't know if hormones are for you or not. I don't know. If you shouldn't be bullied into it because
sure.
you should educate yourself and have this conversation with your doctor. And I always believe in this shared decision making, but both sides need to be informed and kind of ready for it. And again, women can do whatever they want. They can go and just say, I'll do whatever my doctor does or says, and that's fine too. It's your body, your health. But if you are concerned and you want to take control, then we need to advocate for ourselves. And that means it's going to be a little painful and trying to learn about hormones and how our body works and all the confusion, the conflicting information. And it's just the way it is. But I encourage women to do their homework. you're well done for listening to us as well. This is part of your homework. So thanks for tuning in.
Yes.
So one of the things I've been really enjoying is your articles on Substack. And if people don't know what that is, it's just you're writing these articles and they're coming into my mailbox and I've been sharing it with other women. And you spend a lot of time creating these articles for women in peri and postmenopause, it's clear you're taking these deep dives. And so I appreciate first of all the work that you do. And that takes a long time to put these articles together, I imagine.
It takes, I mean, some of them are ridiculous. Like this Dutch test article, which we'll talk about here. It was like a 6 month process. Not every day, not all day, certainly, but it was one of those things. I was like, I got to do this right. And I just went down these rabbit holes. And my poor family, I have three teenage kids and a husband, and they're just like, I wonder when mom is going to come out of her cave. Like, when is she going to come be a part of the family again?
Oh, it shows. It shows. So that one is the one that really caught my eye and then prompted me to say, let's get Amy back on the show. Because, like many of us in this space, we keep hearing doctors who love hormones and love testing hormones. And they're saying it's not just about those symptoms. We really want to see how they're behaving. And that's important. And then there's the other example where, the doctors, just so I make this a little bit clear for people who are listening, in case they don't know what the Dutch test, it's the dried urine test of comprehensive hormones. And this is where we try to see how our hormones are behaving, if they're going down these safe pathways or not. And then you have the other doctors who would say this is complete BS. And it's unnecessary and a waste of money. And it's confusing for both sides because when I interview people, I've had people arguing both sides and they have such strong arguments. And so you yourself in this article, if I read it correctly, you said, okay, I'm going to deep dive into myself because you're hearing the same things. And you spent 6 months reviewing the research on hormone metabolite testing. And then you came to your own conclusions, at least for now. And that article really resonated with me because it really felt so balanced and sensible. So can you walk us through why you decided to write it and then what you ultimately concluded?
I was just confused about what to make of these tests. And just to be fair, I don't have an affiliation with any of the hormone metabolite testing companies. There's a few different ones. Dutch is one of the major known ones, but there are other companies that test metabolites. And when they do these metabolite tests, they're not just checking estrogen metabolites. They're oftentimes looking at progesterone and cortisol and testosterone and all of these things. I didn't tackle all of that. I really just wanted to know one question, which is, are there estrogen metabolite pathways that are more beneficial than others? Because one of the major claims that's made is that there's a safe estrogen metabolite pathway, and then there are two unsafe pathways. And so my main question with this article wasn't necessarily whether these tests have utility. I do think that they probably do in some cases. It was, is there really a safe pathway and an unsafe pathway that has been proven in the literature to be true? So that was kind of my question. And I looked at it in terms of breast cancer risk, because that's the thing that people most often look at in terms of estrogen metabolites, saying that this metabolite pathway is safe and this one's not safe. So that's kind of the overarching thing. And just to give,
That's the question. I think that the
yeah,
overarching thing is really what women are understanding and hearing. And that what's ultimately saying, okay, I'm going to go get the test because of,
yes.
I'm so glad you chose the most important thing that, or the reasons why we're thinking of getting this test. So
Because women are scared. People are scared mostly of breast cancer when it comes to estrogen. So that was the biggest question. So to give you a little bit of background on what's been taught, there estrogen in your liver, there's three different pathways that it can go down as it's kind of getting broken down and ready to get excreted from your body. And so these three different pathways, you think of like actual pathways. There's the 2 pathway, the 2-hydroxy pathway, the 16 pathway, which is a lesser pathway, and the 4-hydroxy. So just think of 2, 4, and 16. And the traditional teaching and what you'll see online is that the 2 pathway is beneficial and the other 2 pathways, the 4 and the 16, are not beneficial. They're dangerous. And so you want to do everything you can to increase the 2 and decrease the other ones, right? And they look at something called the 2:16 ratio. And I know this sounds a little deep, but it's not really going to be that deep. But they look at this ratio and they say you want it to be higher to help protect from breast cancer because the 2 is better, the other ones are worse. And so it's interesting. If you look online, I was trying to look for graphics for this particular Substack, and I was trying to find graphics of the different pathways. Every single pathway that I found had the pathways, every graphic had the pathways labeled as good and bad. They had smiley faces and frowny faces,
And that's
like
how we
all of
remember
them.
them.
All of them. And so I was just like, where does this come from? And is it true? And
Like
so
food
what I did was I
from
went through
back
the
to school.
literature back to the 1970s when we first started studying both urine metabolites, and you can also look at blood. You can look at the same metabolites in blood, and looked at studies on all of these things for the last ever since the 70s. And I went through and I found more than 20, I think 22, 23 studies that have been published on this question about the actual metabolites and breast cancer. And then I just asked the question, does this study support the idea that this higher 2 to 16 ratio is better for breast cancer protection? Of the 22 studies, guess how many studies supported the idea that a higher 2 to 16 was in fact better?
Zero. No?
Not zero,
Okay.
but only seven. So
Okay. I
seven supported
don't
the
remember. I know
idea.
you had it in the article, but now I don't remember.
That's okay. And then 12 completely did not support the idea. Like there was no correlation, or it was the opposite in some cases. And then there were like some in the middle that kind of like were 50-50, like a little bit here and there. So essentially, out of 22 studies, more than half of them don't support the idea that there's necessarily a better pathway versus the others. And yet, we've been telling women this for decades.
So, a question then. So, if there were seven, and I'm sure you looked at this as well, the seven that did show that there is validity to this, were they subsidized by was it the Precision Analytics? I forgot the company that.
No, they've been, I mean, some of these were done in the 70s before there were even
Okay.
specific companies doing it. And they were all, I also looked at, does it matter how we're measuring these metabolites? Like if we're measuring blood versus urine, some of the newer tests like the LCMS testing versus the radioimmunoassays, which are older tests, does that matter? And then the last question I asked, which I think was really important, is have we studied this in women taking hormones? Because that's for my population. If we're doing the Dutch test, which I don't do very often, but if we do, it's because you're taking hormones and we're worried about that metabolism. And it turns out of 22 studies, only two even included women on hormone therapy.
Oh, that's bizarre because that's like you said, most, or at least the women in my community, it's because they're taking hormones. And then when you fill out the paperwork, they want a very detailed explanation of what hormones or medication you're taking. So, and even supplements, like that's
Yeah,
that's bizarre. Oh my, I can't
it is.
believe that.
And there were a couple of others that included women on hormones, but most of the major studies that were looked at hormone users, there were two. I think there were four total studies, but it was really suboptimal for looking at the use in hormonal women on hormone therapy.
Complaining, like, why? This is so frustrating.
Having said that, I think that I wrote this in the article. I don't necessarily think these tests are bad in any way. I think that there probably are use cases, especially now that we're able to take big data sets, like take your personal genetics and your personal epigenetics and your like we can take all this data from you and plug in your estrogen metabolite testing. Maybe we can learn more about specific populations of women who do benefit from one pathway versus the other pathway. My take home was, even if you're told that you're processing estrogen in the wrong pathway, the treatment is almost always the same thing, which is to clean up your diet, exercise, make sure that your gut health is good and that you're having bowel movements regularly. It's the same things we tell people every day anyway. So in most cases, it doesn't actually change what you do, even if there was validity to this pathway thing.
It's insane because the just so people know, I think the Dutch test is around $500 more or less. It's not
Yeah.
cheap. And then on top of it, you need to pay a practitioner to interpret it for you because you can't just take it and read and understand what it's saying on your own. So you're close to $1,000 just to understand how your hormones are quote unquote behaving and if you're safe. And then you get the same answer. And I've seen so many people get their Dutch tests and it is, you're right. Very often it is clean up your diet, eat some more broccoli, maybe take this supplement and get some exercise, good sleep, stress management, and the stuff we need, we know. Now the question that I have is that there is, I don't know if you heard of Carol Peterson.
No.
She's a compounding pharmacist and she's known as the progesterone queen. Like she just deep dives into the research and she knows everything about progesterone. And she, in an interview with her, She's not a fan of Dutch testing or urine metabolite testing, or because there's many. We're not even, so we say Dutch, we talking about a lot.
There's really several different ones.
Yeah, there's stuff out there, and they're all quite expensive. So this is why we're looking for alternatives. And she said, I can tell how you're detoxing your hormones just by your homocysteine levels. And if they're out of the optimal range, then I know I need to give you a little bit of supplementation or tell you to eat more broccoli or whatever. And the same thing for thyroid. She's got thyroid panels and said that also tells me. So this is an alternative to some of these testing that I think is very expensive. And again, if you have extra cash and your doctor likes that and you're into it, great. I guess it's like you said, more data. But I do hear too many women saying it's too expensive. What else can I do? And then they feel really bad if they don't do it. And they'll fork out every last penny for this when maybe they
Yeah.
don't need to do it.
And I think also for doctors, I want doctors to learn about how to prescribe hormones, and I want them to have kind of a minimum viable product that they can take to their patients. What is a safe dose and form of estrogen and progesterone, testosterone for women, for most women? What are the basics you need to know? And then certainly build from your knowledge from there. But to me, these hormone metabolite tests are so complicated that it can be difficult for doctors to jump into treating hormones. And if they think that they can't give hormones without doing these tests, to me, that's just another barrier to them prescribing. So I just think that we need to be cognizant of getting information out to medical providers and to women that is something that we can get out to the masses and not necessarily just to the upper 1 or 2% of women.
Thank you. So you and I were talking about hormones detoxing and estrogen metabolism. And in case these may be totally new words for women who are listening now, but should a woman really be concerned about how her estrogen is being processed or whether it's her own hormones or from HRT? And then if so, is there a reliable way to check that?
Yeah, and I do think that there's usefulness in some of these tests if someone's having a lot of symptoms on their hormones that we're not really sure why. For instance, if I'm giving you like a kind of medium dose of estrogen and progesterone and you're having like all of these high estrogen symptoms, like your breasts are sore, you're gaining all this weight and you feel miserable and you're crying for no reason, and I'm not really quite sure why, or you're behaving a little differently, or you're really high risk for breast cancer or other hormone cancer, I don't think it's unreasonable if the person has the money to do these tests and look at in the pathway, which I think is probably less important than just how quickly you're moving down that pathway. So looking at how quickly you're going through the phase 1 and phase 2, the liver metabolism, and then the gut metabolism. So how fast your estrogen's moving essentially out of your body. And so we can look at that. And there are some things that we could do from like a gut standpoint. Like there are some supplements that can be helpful that could get you through there, or some methyl B vitamins or some things like that maybe are helpful. It's just that I don't think every person needs those tests.
So detox is important, right?
Detox is absolutely important. Absolutely. But I think that most people can do this properly with a good diet, with lots of cruciferous vegetables, making sure that you're having bowel movements every day, making sure that you're not exposed to a lot of extra estrogens in the environment. There are a lot of things that we can do to improve detox without necessarily having to do the tests in many patients.
Who wants to do that? Boring.
And I will say some patients are very driven by data. So if we get a test, like one of these metabolite tests, and they see that they're metabolizing this estrogen poorly, it's getting stuck at phase 1 or whatever, then sometimes that really will drive behavior. And they'll be like, oh my gosh, I really should eat more vegetables and work out harder. And they'll actually make changes that maybe they wouldn't make otherwise. And so I think that there is validity in some populations of people where we know that this is going to help change behavior to do tests like this.
That's true. That's absolutely true. I always say when we can do testing through data, through our rings or watches, and sometimes I had some people ask me about buying an Oura ring, like hoping it will make them sleep better, as if it were, I don't know. It's actually kind of like your mom reminding you to go to bed. Like it's supposed to motivate you to have healthy behaviors, but it's not going to correct your sleep. And sometimes people get really scared by the data and they don't even want to look at it. So
Yeah.
there are all kinds of people out there, but I don't know if that's just sticking your head in the sand or not, because I'm a data driven person, but some people do get really afraid.
Yeah, I think that's one of the questions just of kind of like longevity medicine in general is how much data is too much data or how much is enough? Because we can measure all kinds of things now. And there are, I mean, if you want to do all the tests that are out there, you're going to be spending tens of thousands of dollars to do these tests. And the question is, do they change your behavior and do they change your outcomes? And that's the part that I don't think we have answered yet.
Okay. Is there, since we're talking about testing and you are in this longevity space and women's health and obviously menopause, but what if somebody had to choose one test to see how they're aging or how their future may look like, what test would you recommend they do?
I mean, certainly all the normal diagnostic blood tests that, you could get from just your normal doctor are, I think are important, but I think your metabolite testing and your insulin and your blood sugar and your lipids, that I think is just like that. Everyone should be doing that at least once or twice a year. The other test that I've really become a fan of, especially for women and especially in this perimenopause, menopause transition, is the glycanage test.
Hmm.
Are you familiar with it?
Yes, yeah, we have an episode on it. It's interesting.
It's very interesting, and I think it's interesting in its relationship to estrogen specifically, and being able to use this test. For instance, in perimenopausal women, you can follow your glycanate. It's a blood test you do at home, and you can follow it maybe once a year. And when you have this big increase in glycanage during perimenopause, that is often when we're seeing that your overall estrogen levels have fallen and your inflammation has increased. And so maybe it's time to start estrogen therapy if that's something you're going to do. So it can really be helpful for making treatment decisions in our women who are taking estrogen therapy, helping with adjusting the dose or getting people on or off hormones by looking at how quickly their immune system is aging and that inflammation, which is what glycanage is looking at.
So there is something I'm looking into now, and I don't know much about it, but it's called a Mira test, and it's this little device, and it's kind of like a Dutch test. I mean, in the sense that you pee on a stick, and then but you can do this every single day and for months. And it's an at-home device, and I've got one. I haven't tested it out, it sounds brilliant. I don't know if you know anything about it.
No, I don't know that one. I have heard of other people doing home like hormone tests, but I haven't used it.
They say it's for perimenopausal women, not post or not a woman who's
Okay.
on hormones, which doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense to me knowing what I know, but I'll let you know what I find out. And it's supposed to help a woman who is going through perimenopause determine, am I really low in progesterone or not? Should I take it, not take it? And you can have this
Yeah.
data, but I'll keep you posted. I can't make conclusions yet.
Yes, do keep me posted because perimenopause is a tricky time to be a woman and to be the doctor taking care of a woman because things are often changing so much from week to week and month to month.
On this theme of testing as well, I want to keep going. As a gerontologist, I also talk about testing beyond those sex hormones to support our future selves. So, are there any labs or assessments that you would recommend for women in peri and early perimenopause to protect their 80-year-old selves? Because we're often very concerned about our heart health, our bone, our brain, our muscle. And I have actually a reel I did with like the 6 most important lab tests to get. So I'd love to know which lab tests you would say are quite important during this time to protect our future selves.
The lab tests I think that are most important that are readily available are your ApoB for your lipids, your CRP, a high sensitivity CRP, which looks at inflammation, some kind of marker of insulin resistance, something like a either hemoglobin A1C or HOMA IR or fasting insulin or a combination of those things, some kind of marker of that. And then those are really important. I mean, I think you got to check all the body systems at least every year, the liver, the kidneys, all those things. But I think that those are some of the tests that are often missed by doctors who are doing those yearly tests, and we need to make sure we add those in.
What about bone health? Do you have a preference on how to measure that?
I think a DEXA scan is a great idea, and I think all women should be getting DEXA scans, even starting at 30 or 35 or even younger. I've had 20 people in their late 20s with osteopenia. So DEXA scan, of course, looks at bone health as well as visceral fat and lean muscle mass. So just making sure that those are in the optimal ranges, I think is great. There are also some other tests like the RIMS test and ultrasound that you can do for bone. There's also some bone tests that you can do that are urine or blood tests like the CTX or NTX. Those are a little bit trickier to to look at it. They can change pretty quickly depending on what you're doing during the day, but they can be good markers as well. And then I think the VO2 max is very well known to correlate with longevity. That's running on the treadmill with the mask on and you're going up to as hard as you can. It's looking at oxygen consumption. And that's something that we do in our clinics as well.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, I love doing. I haven't done the VO2 test. There is a clinic down the road. I'm got my eye on because I want to see. I just want to have a starting base. See
Yeah.
where I'm at. What about breast screening? What do you recommend your women to do?
I mean, I think that my main message is get breast screening done. I think there's a lot of arguments about whether mammogram is best or ultrasound or MRI or the new one, the QT. Is it QT? I think it's something like that. And I think that there are cases to be made for all the different things, but my main message is don't skip the breast screening just because you can't decide what to do. For me, like I do mammograms still every year, and then I've done breast MRIs intermittently on myself, and then I've also done ultrasounds intermittently. So any abnormal mammogram findings, I'm always following up with something else, and for my patients as well.
Yeah, that's such a hard one. I've interviewed women on both sides, and I think we're always confused even more. What do I do? The answer that I would give is exactly like you'd said. You got to do something, some
Yeah.
kind of breastfeeding. But I think some people get so scared of mammograms that then they don't do anything because they don't have access to the other things or they just don't know what to do. It's like a deer in headlights.
Yeah.
And that's where things can go wrong. And I always say, do the mammogram. Like we have mammogram hacks, like radiation hacks. Like you take the protocol for offset the radiation or feel a little bit better about yourself, but at least
Yeah.
get it done.
And the radiation is similar to going on a cross-country flight. I mean, I travel so much, like I can't be afraid of mammograms when I'm on the airplane 4 or 5 weeks out of the year or the month. Like it's the same amount of radiation as going from like New York to LA on an airplane.
But the argument that people have, and this is what they say, is well, it's localized and that's targeted and that's you're
Yeah.
disrupting and squashing. And that's a great Substack article for you to do
And
next.
I get it. I'm not an expert on mammograms. I definitely think that there are probably better ways, and certainly, it's probably safer to do an MRI, but the MRI has to have contrast and it's expensive and insurance doesn't pay for it. Ultrasounds miss things. Like I just think that we don't have perfect testing and certainly not widely available perfect testing. And we do have mammograms widely available. So, if you're someone who can afford to go get something else done and your doctor is good with it, awesome. But if you are just looking for something that has been proven to catch breast cancer and we think is pretty safe, then I think mammograms are the way to go.
I have a great episode with Dr. Elizabeth Yorth. You know who she is, right?
I do, yes.
So balanced. And when I get confused, I call Dr. Yorth.
She's so smart. She knows everything about everything. Like she knows the cellular pathways for everything. I have no
By
idea
heart.
how.
By heart.
By heart. Yeah, yeah, by heart.
She's incredible. I had the question about, what was it? Let me find it. Okay, so you shared another reel and an article why doctors rarely give a straight answer on what estradiol levels should be in peri and postmenopause. It's exactly every time I interview a menopause doctor, I'm like, what the levels should be, and they side skirt it. Like it's really hard. So how do you personally answer that question when women come to your clinic looking for guidance? They want a number.
So in perimenopause, I don't give a number because it really is different from day to day. In menopause, if we're giving you estrogen, in general, I think the goal is probably somewhere between 65 and 150 picograms per ml in the blood. Now, that's not going to be the perfect number for everybody, but if we look at the bone protection data, the cardiovascular protection data, the studies that have been done thus far, the doses that have been given that correlates to that range of serum estradiol levels.
That's great. A clear answer. Yay. More or
Yeah.
less. And again, of course, that depends on your symptom relief too, because sometimes people
Yes.
are shooting for that and they're like, oh my God, my breasts are so tender. And they got to figure out the formula so that they
Yes.
get the protection that they want or the levels, but yet not overdose and not underdose. And it's such an art. But the interesting thing, maybe this will resonate with you, but I just interviewed, do you know Dr. John Newstad?
No.
Dr. Doug Lucas.
Yes.
So I interviewed the two of them. They're both bone experts and they're both incredible and they just dive into the research. And so I asked them about estradiol levels and bone protection. And evidently, the research shows that you only need to get above 11 picograms per ml to stop bone loss. Now, to start building bone, it's 20 picograms per ml. And these are very low levels.
Very low levels,
In
yes.
order to get this bone protection, which is incredible. And so then Doug was saying, well, yeah, true, but we're also looking at heart, at breast, at brain. And so all of these research studies will show different levels and all these different things. So they like to shoot for, they said at least 60 to 90 minimum. I always like to remember the number 100.
Yeah, 100 is a good number, somewhere around there. And I think his point is really good. Like with bone, very baby doses of estrogen can help with bones. If you can't tolerate estrogen or you're scared of estrogen for some reason, then even just a baby dose is going to help your bones. And you can start it at any time. Like we see even in 75-year-old women and this has been studied, who have been off of hormones since menopause. If you give them estrogen, low doses of estrogen, then they can still have bone benefits even at that late in the game. So I think that's a good lesson, that we don't have to go with high doses to help the bones. Although it's also true that higher doses protect the bones more than lower doses. There is a linear relationship up to a point between dose and bone protection and bone building with estrogen.
And then when you stop, you lose that protection.
Yes, that's another key message. Like any medication that you would take, when you stop taking it, your benefits go away. So it is unfortunate with bone. I think it's within about 6 months you start to kind of revert back to the bone breakdown that you would see if you weren't taking estrogen.
So your own mother and her own bone situation, and you've got her on hormones, which if I understand, you got her back on.
So my mom was one of the 20 million women who were affected by the WHI when she went through, she had a hysterectomy and went through menopause and was taken off of her hormones. And then she went for more than 10 years without hormones until in 2012, I started learning about these hormones and I was like, oh my gosh, I got to get her on them. And by that point, she was kind of 63-ish age. But I got her back on estrogen. I got her on estrogen and progesterone at that time. And she stayed on them, but unfortunately she'd already developed almost osteoporosis. We'd gotten it down to where it wasn't quite as bad, but she still had kind of weak bones, even though she was taking estrogen and progesterone. So then 2 years ago, she fell, broke her hip, got surgery, and they're sending her home from the surgery. And the doctor is looking at her discharge instructions, and he's like, he sees her only medication is estrogen and thyroid. She's 75 years old. She's completely healthy except for estrogen and thyroid. He circles the estrogen and is like, oh, he marks it out. And I was like, you don't need this anymore. And then she went home and had all these estrogen withdrawal symptoms because she had been taking off her estrogen. And I didn't know about it at that time until later. It was a big mess. And anyway, long story short, her doctors had no idea that estrogen is the best thing for bone building. And why are you taking off her of it? And she needs to repair her hip that she just broke.
Unbelievable. It's shocking. A doctor who repairs the bone doesn't know this. And
Yeah.
it's so much.
What's even more crazy is that she had been battling with urinary symptoms for years. She'd seen urologists, she'd urinary incontinence and recurring UTIs and all of these symptoms. She'd seen urologists, she'd gotten these expensive $500 a month medications that insurance wouldn't pay for. She eventually had a sacral nerve stimulator surgery done to try to help with the bladder. And by the way, I had told her before to take low dose vaginal estrogen, but she didn't really want to. She didn't really do it. But she goes through all of this. Her doctors never mention vaginal estrogen until finally I kind of forced her to take it. I was like, give it 3 months, take it for 3 months and just see what happens. And she does. And it made the biggest difference out of everything that she's had done in the last 5 years.
She could have saved a lot of money because
I know. I feel so bad. I feel I should have forced it on her earlier.
Yeah.
That's my bad.
Well, no, you know what? You did your best. That's it. She's coming around and she's still young and she still has time and she's got the hormones on board. And just as a caveat, so anybody's listening, we talk all about these hormones are great, but every time I interview a doctor like you, it goes without saying to get your nutrition, your exercise, your sleep, and your stress management and all these other things in place because it's not just the hormones.
What I think about is that whether you take hormones or not, when you lose the protection of what your ovary provides you, as women, our ovaries and the eggs and the hormones that they make provide kind of all of our longevity benefits that we see. Maybe not all, but most of them. And so when those hormones go away at menopause, whether you take hormones or not, you have to think about like strategically going in and fortifying the different systems that are now going to start breaking down. So, your brain, your blood vessels, your muscles, your pelvic floor, your bones. So whether that's with hormones or with lifestyle, or hopefully, maybe a combination of those things, you want to be strategic in making sure that you are kind of fortifying your castle, if you will.
What are the things, what are, say, five important things that a woman needs to do in addition to hormone therapy in terms to fortify her bones?
I think for bones, I certainly lifting heavy weights, and if you can, jumping exercises, like axial loading. I make sure that whether it's jumping rope or just doing like hopscotch or things like that can make a huge difference. I do jumping jacks. I make sure I do jumping jacks every day for myself because my mom and my grandmother both had hip fractures. So jumping and weightlifting for bones, as well as making sure you're getting your micronutrients. The studies for getting calcium and vitamin D and things like that are not as strong for bone health as we would like, but we do know that you do need all of like your micronutrients like vitamin D and selenium and calcium and magnesium and vitamin K. All those kinds of things are really important for bone building, which of course is going to come from a healthy diet in general. And then people don't know it, but bones they're metabolic organs. So anything that you do that can maintain metabolic health, keep inflammation down, just be generally healthy, whether that's keeping your stress down or sleeping better or avoiding alcohol and smoking, like all of those things are good for your bones, just like they are the rest of your body.
What about, since your mom has osteoporosis, she's still in that?
She has osteopenia now, so it's gotten back to not porosis, but weak bones, but not as weak.
Okay, so you've improved it. Like you're reversing it, which is
Yeah. She's been the last year and a half. We worked really hard on her bones.
so you mentioned then some of the impact, the plyometrics or jumping up and down jump ropes. So for her or somebody who has osteoporosis, what kind of can they do those exercises, or do you think there's something else? Because sometimes they get scared, they do nothing at
Yeah.
all. And
Yeah, my mom can't jump because she still has to use a cane because she still is a little off balance. So she can't jump. She's doing mostly weightlifting. She does yoga. She goes to the gym and does like actual other weightlifting. And then I haven't done it with her, but I have some patients who will do like the vibration plates. And I know there is some evidence for at least holding off bone degradation with those vibration plates where you just hold on and it kind of vibrates for you. And I think that could be a tool as well if you can't do the jumping part.
what about the heel drops when you just kind of go on the, could she do that?
She could do that on one side. I think if she's holding on, she could do it. Bash. I don't think that she just needs to hold on to something.
It's more like a stability thing.
Yeah, she just has to use. She had torn some muscles in that leg years before when she fell down my stairs. The stairs themselves literally crashed, like they broke, and she fell down.
Oh
It,
no.
it was horrible. I was out of town, but anyway. So she had torn a bunch of muscles earlier and didn't know it, and then she broke her hip later. So she got a little bit of stability issues with that side.
Working, yeah, more in yoga and getting the balance there. So the heel drops, I heard, where you just get on your toes and then you drop down your heel, I heard is a little bit safer for people who have osteoporotic bones.
Yeah.
Does she do OsteoStrong? That's a machine where it's once a week and it's been shown to improve bone density.
Yeah, I mean, I know of it. She's not doing it right now, but she just moved to Boise, so I'll have to see what they have available there because she just moved from her where she used to be.
Okay, yeah, no, that's another thing that I've been hearing. I do know several people who have great results from it. It's just kind of mind blowing because you do it once a week, and I'm like, once a week won't do anything, but obviously it does.
Yeah, I've heard good things too.
It does. So I wish your mom speed recovery and get stronger and stronger and keep reversing that. That's just so important. And just so people know, what I've learned from these bone doctors as well, the number on the scan, a DEXA or whatever, is just one number. It doesn't give you the whole picture of everything else that's going on. And so that's why you look at other markers. But sometimes I meet so many women in our community who are in their 50s and we have osteopenia. And then you're freaking out because they feel like if I have osteopenia now, what's going to happen to me in 5 or 10 years? And you could see yourself going down that road. So it's a bit of a panic that's maybe not necessary. And because it's again, just one piece of the puzzle. Would you agree?
And it's reversible. I mean, Dr. Lucas will tell you, this is reversible. If you do all the things and you do them the right way, you can turn osteopenia into healthy bone.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So, as a doctor, you are a doctor specializing in women's longevity. What are the 3 most important habits a woman can create in peri and postmenopause to increase her chances of a long health span, joy span, love span, and I think you've got also play span?
Yes, all the spans. The habits that I really lean into are sleep, prioritizing sleep and learning how to sleep, the healthy sleep habits, et cetera. I think that makes all the difference for women throughout our lives. I think that obviously exercise, but for me personally, and what I tell my patients is I think getting outside and exercising in nature makes you're killing two birds. You're getting the exercise piece, but you're also getting the stress reduction piece. And because we know this is really good for cortisol regulation and brain neuroplasticity and all kinds of things. So exercising outside in nature, get a little bit of sun along the way, but cover your face up. And I think so sleeping, and then of course diet is always going to be up there. But honestly, beyond even all of those three things, I think that the social connection part is probably one of the big keys that we don't talk about as much in women or in men as well. But it's probably one of the bigger drivers of long-term longevity than anything else.
I'm so glad you said that. And I've been hearing a little bit more and more in this space of longevity or biohacking, and because we're always so focused on the peptides and the regenerative medicine, all these things.
Yeah.
And when I was doing my gerontology studies, I really was impressed by the Harvard study of adult development that
Yep.
this is one of the longest longitudinal studies that's out there looking at older adults. And they found after, I think it was 75 years of research, starting in 1938, and then they concluded the thing that impacts our happiness and our longevity the most, more than exercise and smoking and diet and all this thing, was having strong relationships. I mean, that just blew my mind. I thought, oh my
Yeah.
God, that's
I
really
know.
important to be around the people who love you and support you and having these relationships, these positive relationships, because the negative ones obviously can decrease your lifespan and make you more
Yes.
depressed. But that was a pretty big piece. And here we are talking about all these other things, which are important, but we often forget some of these very basic principles. So I'm glad you brought that up.
I think a lot of us spend more and more time on our phones, in front of our computers, in front of our Netflix, and I'm guilty of it as well. Just not prioritizing. Certainly, my family's here with me, so that's easier. But what about my friends? Like not going out to dinner as much as maybe I used to. But I need to tell myself, like, this is not just enjoyable, it's actually really good for long-term health to make sure that you have friends and family around you as much as you can.
I always tell people to nurture your network. You'll need them later on.
Yes.
Okay, let's wrap up because you've combined your deep expertise in hormones and skin health and regenerative medicine. And what's the one exciting new technology or treatment that you've seen lately that could really improve the look and quality of a woman's skin in midlife?
Ooh, I like all the skin things. I like all the stem cells and regenerative medicine injections. But I also like some of the things that we've had for years, the lasers, for instance. The BBL laser, I think, is fantastic, or like a fractional not ablative laser. I just had one a few weeks ago and I could tell a huge difference in my skin. Certainly, you layer that with the injectables like the stem cells or the exosomes or those kinds of things. But we have so many good technologies in the dermatology, plastic surgery space that can help keep your skin looking healthy. So yeah, love all of those things.
I've seen also a big difference when I was doing the fractional laser. Like you walk
Yeah.
out of there going, actually, I see different, and you see over time the
Yes.
impact. Any thoughts on GHKCU for skin?
Yeah, I think that the early studies, most of it's still animal data, but I think that the early studies look good. And certainly I've used GHK copper topically mostly. Although the injectable forms are still on the FDA's do not compound list, at least as far as I remember. I think it's great for skin and for hair, and putting it into your skin cream it's a great idea if you have access to it.
Do you use it yourself? I mean, do you use
I have both. I have the compounded versions that have like GHK copper and a couple of other ingredients like the sirolimus rapamycin as a cream is in there. And I use Young Goose a lot and they have GHK copper in a lot of their formulations as well. So I use it in some form fairly frequently.
Someone's been trying to convince me to inject GHKCU. I hate injecting. I don't want to. I will if I have to. But she says it makes a huge difference when she's injecting it. Have you ever tried injectables?
I have. I've tried it. And in that one, you want to kind of go in cycles. You don't want to do it all the time. You want to do like a month on and then you take a couple of months off because you can get too much copper, actually. Again, it's all anecdotal. I don't know for sure if I saw a big change in myself, but I think that it is GHK copper is important for many different aspects of the body. And I think that I'd love to see more information about it, more published on it. I think injecting it is certainly a good option.
I've been using a serum for my scars because I've had two hip replacements. So I'm
Oh.
Yeah. I had two chances to experiment and really good. It was recommended. I had a whole regenerative medicine team and they were like, get the copper peptides. I was like, okay.
Yes.
And
Yes.
they didn't say inject, so I was just using a serum. I was like, I can do that. And
Yeah, the topical with topical GHK copper, there are human studies are much more prevalent. It's the injectables we just don't have that human data on yet.
okay. All right, we're going to wrap up. And I do want to ask you a little bit, pick your brain on a book that's coming out. What are you going to write about and what should we know about it?
I have a book coming out. The working title is The Longevity Curve. I don't know if it'll stay that way, but it'll be out in early 2027. It's published by Hachette and publishers, and it's women's longevity through the lens of reproductive aging and sexual health. It's kind of looking at the role of ovarian aging in aging and the way that women having ovaries, whether you still have them or not, and eggs, kind of changes the way our physiology responds to aging. And it confers a number of benefits on women. And how do we take advantage of those benefits with modern technologies?
Oh, that's exciting. I interviewed Dr. Lizellen LaFollette, and she's with the Buck Institute, and she was telling me about this new research that's coming out. And she's like, our ovaries, they don't die. Like they still have function way beyond menopause.
And the ovaries, it's not just estrogen, progesterone. They actually contain, they have 50 different substances that they make with between like prostaglandins and growth factors and other hormones. And so it's fascinating. I'm still learning a lot about it, but it's fascinating how active they are, even probably later on.
When's the book coming out?
Early 2027.
Oh
I
God, we
still
gotta
have some
wait.
time.
We gotta wait.
I
Okay.
know, but follow me on Instagram, follow me on Substack, become part of my ecosystem, and eventually we'll have a book for you.
Yes, and we'll get you on again. And after you, when it launches, and when I read it, because I want to read it and then have a chat with you about it. But I'll have links to your social media on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. You're everywhere, either as Dr. Amy B. Killen, or you also have Human Not Health and Hotbox Life. And I've got all these links, all these other things that you're doing at your website. Is there anything else that you want to share before I let you go in terms of things you're working on or where to direct the audience? What should we know?
That the last thing is I'm working on a hormone course for medical providers that is going to be out in the next couple of weeks. So it is a comprehensive video course plus a very long guidebook that's going to have links to studies, and I try to kind of break it down so that you can actually prescribe hormones if whether you're new to it or you've been doing it for a while. So that's coming out soon. So follow me on all the channels and I'll make sure I let you know how to get that.
I love it. Oh, wonderful. Yes. And send me any links as well, and we can help promote it and share it. And we definitely need more doctors who know what you know. So thank you so much,
Thank
Dr.
you. It's always good to see you.
Yes. And hope to have you again, and have everyone who's listened to the end of the episode. Thank you so much for spending your time with me and Amy. We will love you, and hopefully you learn something new, and we'll see you next time. Take care.